Fox Sports 1 NFL college football analyst, and also a gentleman who's going to be calling some games for the Pac-12 network. Good to see you, Ryan Leaf, once again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You bet. So let's just jump right into it. I saw a couple tweets that you had on the news that came out of Ohio State yesterday that Urban Meyer is getting a 3-game suspension. Gene Smith is getting a 2-week suspension. And other than the report for all of us to digest, the page will be turned there in Columbus. What are your thoughts?
Last night it was difficult last night. I don't. For somebody who, let's put it this way, I have a unique perspective on it. The fact that I was a college coach and I messed up, and I found a way to deal with the consequences and be better. But I've been asked the question lately, like if somebody offered me a coaching job again, would I take it? And my answer is I don't know if I deserve it, right? I don't know if a parent could trust me with their child because of my past mistakes. And those are consequences to that. Coaching in college is not a right, it's a privilege. And I'm not really, the investigation and everything that comes out with it, I'm not necessarily too involved with that, but what the program stood for, what they said it stood for, was a marketing campaign, essentially. It wasn't what he believed, because he stepped up on Big Ten Media Day, simply told the world a lie, and hey, coaches lie to the media all the time. It was what it was about that he lied about. That's the problem for me. And essentially, he told all those kids he coaches that it's okay to lie because you'll just get a slap on the wrist, and essentially he victim shamed. And for me, those two things don't compute. Now, what I hoped would have happened is that, and I made this clear to Ohio State fans, you're gonna be okay if Urban Meyer's not your head coach. It just proved to everybody that they had the opportunity to be better during this whole process, and they weren't. And that's the troubling part of it. To your point, they flipped the page. I think Urban Meyer's answer to all these questions that come up in the next few weeks are just simply, the school made their decision. I sat out 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's what's going to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's unless he decides to do unless he does decide that there is some sort of PR work on his part that needs to be done for himself, whether somebody sits him down and explains to him this is what's happening, that if he does not want to coach much longer for whatever reason, does want a job in the media afterwards and needs to reburnish his credentials on that front, that he sits down and has a one-on-one with some potentially friendly face. That other than that, the question, anybody asks him a question, it'll be like, that's already done. I served my time, asked and answered, next question.
Yeah. And the hardest thing to kind of take in from all this, and it just proves to the point of why, like, a jury of your peers doesn't mean people who benefit from you staying in place, right? The people that adjudicated this process were individuals that benefited with Urban Meyer staying on in his job. That's not an unbiased investigation. I mean, you read the investigation stuff.
I did. I read it cover to cover.
This was not presented to the media either before the press conference. Do you think the media would have had some sort of question here and there on what was presented in that investigation? That was left till after he made the statement. This was a big thing. So when I yelled at the reporter, that was kind of what went viral 20 years ago. I stood up the next day and gave an apology, or what was a written apology. And when I watched the press conference last night, it was like I use this analogy a lot when I see people behaving in the same form that I have in my life. I say, like, oh, it looked like I was looking in a mirror. Because if you watch, there's just so much unemotion in when I'm giving this statement, and I just kind of discard the paper into my locker. I just thought to myself in that moment, I'm like, that's me at 21 years old, simply not taking any accountability for what I just did the day before. And it opens your eyes to these things when it happens. It makes you truly confront what you have been like, and then go, why can't he see that either? Wasn't he not prepared for this process that was about to happen last night?
These are all good questions. I don't, I've spent the last month trying to be somebody who can get inside Urban Meyer's head and what he's thinking and how he goes about his business, and whether he feels that he should be accountable to anybody other than the fan base that he says that he's let down. I honestly don't know how to answer all that. But one thing I do want to touch upon a little bit more of what you've just said over the last few minutes, Ryan Leaf here on the Rich Eisen Show, is putting yourself in the shoes of Zach Smith. So you've been there, is what you're saying.
Well, I think that anytime somebody acts out behaviorally, I think that you develop some sort of empathy. And when I talk to these college kids, I talk to them about the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Sympathy is you feel sorry for somebody. Empathy is you actually put yourself in their shoes and experience what they're feeling.
Right.
And yesterday when Urban Meyer was giving that speech or reading that statement, I was like, I could put myself in his shoes and know exactly where he was at that moment. And you have to take that all in and then not necessarily pass judgment on it, but understand that you know what he's going through and he just isn't aware. There's no self-awareness around it.
Right. But in terms of Zach Smith, some of the behavior that's described here for outside of what was going on with his wife is completely out of control.
And the fact that he had a job, how does that happen? I mean, how does he continue to have a job in that position? That's hearing what the investigation brought to form makes me even wonder more why continuously it happened over and over and over again. That's a big reason why everybody's still wondering why Urban Meyer didn't do anything before.
Well, I'm assuming the coach who you were coaching for, you weren't the grandson of his mentor.
I was removed from my job immediately as soon as the head coach found out. I was asked to resign.
Well, and they're saying that Urban didn't know about the photographs in the White House, didn't know what was going on with his secretary, didn't know. But Brett McMurphy, who's reporting, has been at the forefront of all this, said that definitely staff at the Ohio State knew that.
That is a cop-out. It is.
Did other members of the staff of which football program was it?
West Texas A&M.
Okay.
In college, and yeah, I mean the it wasn't a joke. The constant was that if you got injured, Coach Leaf would come see you, essentially, and take advantage of them by asking them for their pain pills, or ultimately at the end, just taking them from the player. So it was known. The head coach clearly didn't know until it was presented to him, and immediately I was asked to resign. So I have the understanding. Let's look at it this way. Consequences are deserving of what behavior is exhibited. I go to the Ray Rice incident, right? It's a privilege to play pro football. I know that, and it's not a right. And there were consequences to his actions. Now, what he did with that and what he's doing now with it, he's out there raising awareness. He's trying to be a better man. He's speaking about it. That was the change. And I talked about this when this first initially happened with Urban Meyer. I said that he is going to either become a better person when he loses his job, because I thought he was going to lose his job from when this first came out. And I said, he can take this, have an understanding, and be better about it and become a better man because he didn't act accordingly like he was supposed to. And all I feel like Ohio State did in this moment is just enable his behavior. I surrounded myself with people like that my whole life, right? That just told me I was the victim, that it wasn't my fault. But the people who really care about me and who really unconditionally love me, showed me that mirror, showed me when I was behaving that way. And that was the only way I could make a change in myself. Otherwise, I was just going to continue to act out and behave the same way my whole life.
Ryan Leaf here on the Rich Eisen Show. Take a 60-second break, come back, set up the Pac-12 season that you're going to be calling some games for Pac-12 and also Pac-12 Network. And also you have gone to a ton of schools. We had Chris Peterson of Washington here having a cougar into his midst to talk to his Huskies. I would love to know what you're telling these kids when you see them. Back in 60 seconds with Ryan Leaf here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, welcome back to the show. Ryan Leaf is here. So we had Chris Peterson of Washington on the show, and he's like, I had Ryan Leaf in to talk to the kids. And obviously, I know what your message is, and some fans who don't, are about to hear it. My first thought was, what? Like Washington State's Ryan Leaf here in Washington? And he said it was great. He said it was awesome having you there.
It was difficult, I'll be honest with you, to be there. But I think that, the message is so much more important than any rivalry because, sure. And it was emotional for whatever reason. There's been something that I've added to the speech about, seeing the starting quarterback for my alma mater take his life. And I expressed to them in that moment that if you need to use somebody, if you need to ask for help, you can use me. And that crosses every line you can imagine when it comes to rivalry and everything like that. So it's been really impactful for me. Nick Saban was the first coach to reach out last year. And I think that tells you a lot coming from the 5-time national champion.
So did you know he was calling? Or did your phone just go off? Hey, Ryan.
Well, he had it. He had his his operations guy Ellis call me. Mm-hmm. He had seen the ESPN documentary that Tom Rinaldi had done.
Yes.
And sure enough, he had me out. First one to have me out. And then as soon as that happens, all of a sudden his coaching tree, of course, and Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher and everybody who's coached under him goes, oh, this is what Nick's doing? Okay. So then my phone starts to ring more. And then this year, I traveled around and hit up about eight football teams this fall.
So is that how Lane Kiffin wound up on your itinerary?
I believe so.
From Saban?
I believe so. I think they all stem to come from that. I also think Ryan Holiday, who wrote the book Ego is the Enemy, helped I guess grease those skids a little bit too.
And so again, what is your message that you're telling these 18, 19, 20-year-olds?
It's just pretty much my story. I don't necessarily go in there and tell them what to do or what not to do, but I think a lot of people assume it's about how not to do something or about my substance abuse problems, but it's about choice, and it's about entitlement. It's about understanding that there are different things that make success, and it's not money, power, and prestige. It's about accountability and choices, and that's essentially what it is. And hopefully there's an impact. I can't control what they do with the message. I find that there are plenty of great messengers out there right now. I followed in a couple of the venues. I followed Rachel Barbeau, who has started this program called Changing the Narrative, and Brenda Tracy, who's been working the program Set the Expectation. Really impressive young women, and are doing a tremendous job. And I just kind of come in from the other side of things. They come in from the victim side of things. I come in from the side of essentially the entitled athlete, and how and I tell those guys, I look them right in the face and I say, you're sitting exactly where I was, and I got to accomplish everything you want to accomplish, and I still lost it all because of my lack of ability to deal with life on life's terms. And that's usually how the story starts. Coaches have been really, really welcoming. I'm going to do some extra work with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher and that staff this season. I'm actually going to go with them to the Alabama game.
Jeez.
So, this is great for me because football is such an important part of my life. It gave me everything. It was a toxic thing for me for a long time, and I wanted to push it as far away from my life, but it's also given me so much. And for me to be back involved, I do feel like it's just the way things were meant to be, to come full circle in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's you realizing what needs to be done to make sure that this circle could actually be made full. Ryan Leaf here on the Rich Eisen Show. So let me ask you this, and I was going to ask you a Pac-12 question, and if we have time, I will do that. We were talking ad nauseum this week about number one, first-round draft choice quarterbacks. Start them, throw them in there, sink or swim. Certainly, if you're an organization that has not won of late, you need to see what you've got in somebody right away. Is there a philosophy that you have, Ryan, from your perspective?
I think that things have changed quite a bit. I think that the players that are being drafted first into the NFL are much more prepared than I ever was, just when it comes to dealing with the media, dealing with failure. I think that we haven't seen what you would consider a first-round bust at quarterback for quite a while, maybe RG3, and that.
I mean, you could throw Manziel in there. I mean, Johnny was drafted for, but I mean, you're talking about top 5.
Yeah, let's say
quarterback.
Let's say that I don't necessarily know if it truly has happened in a while. So, what I'd like to see is the guys get the opportunities if they're ready. The idea that I planted here a while ago when I was here talking about the Cleveland Browns and not wanting to go there. I don't know what that's going to. I hear you're up on them, like a 6 or 8 win season this year. Yeah,
I am. Well, Jarvis Landry, and if obviously whatever Josh Gordon is coming to grips with successfully, if he's out there, David Njoku. I mean, these are all physical people with serious business decisions created on behalf of the people they're going towards. Chubb and Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson, the offensive line. I mean. And then there's the defensive side of the ball. Miles Garrett, they have playmakers all over
do.
the spot. Jabril Peppers, they got playmakers everywhere. They should win
They
6
should be.
games.
They should have been before too. At some points, I think this is a systematic. The fact they brought in John Dorsey, I think, is a huge step forward. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. But if we do see a step forward, it's not going to be with Baker Mayfield at the quarterback position. It's going to be because of Tyrod Taylor. And if they are where you saying they get to 6 or 8 wins, then Baker Mayfield's not going to be the one getting in the games then, because that's going to be enough wins to probably save Hugh Jackson's job.
I know that, but then at some point they're going to have to transition to Baker Mayfield. He's number 1 overall, Ryan.
They're not the Green Bay Packers, right?
I don't believe so.
They can't. I don't know if they have it in them to do what they're going to try to do, and that's allow the starter to be the quarterback and have the rookie learn. There's 2 different organizations there. It worked out, and it was combustible and almost a chaotic situation when Brett Favre left in all the process. So, I mean, it's interesting. That's why it plays out. The NFL is fun to be a part of. Can't wait for college football to start, and it starts next Thursday, a week from today.
Yes, it does. Next Thursday, I've got there's 5 games. The Pac-12 Network has Weber State, Utah. Which games are you calling for the Pac-12 Network?
I'm doing a couple Washington State games.
Okay.
They're non-conference. More importantly, the first game is against San Jose State, which will be the first home game in Pullman since the passing of Tyler Helinski. And most likely they're going to do something to remember him by on that first play. And what an honor is it going to be on the call for that moment.
What do you think? Can you reveal what they might do there?
I assume it'll be something similar, and what's been talked about is possibly doing the missing man formation.
Sort of like for Sean Taylor?
Yes.
What the Redskins did?
Yeah, or what Nebraska did for their punter. I hope so. I think that that would be a representative of what they felt for Tyler, and I think it's going to be emotional for me to.
You're getting emotional here.
Yeah, it's going to be emotional for me to be on the call. And that's where the emotion switched when I was speaking to Washington, where it kind of turned from the fact that I was speaking to, those mangy dogs in purple, It was about that. Even though they did that, even though they wore the W, even though they wear the purple, I don't want anybody anywhere ever to feel like they're not worth it at any point, because this human existence is so important. It's so precious. And now that I have a child and just the things I've been through and the understanding of what's important in life, we got to change the stigma so that nothing like that ever happens again.
Well, enjoy those road trips, Ryan, and let's see how you can work us into your schedule.
I love it.
Your very busy schedule. Always enjoy having you here, man.
Thanks, guys.
Always enjoy it. You got it. That's Ryan Leaf here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.